Let's look at the basics of digits and place value.
It's always best to start at the beginning.
You're definitely going to need to know these places. The ones digit is the furthest to the right in a whole number. We won't talk about decimals just yet. To the left of him is the tens digit. Then the hundreds. Then the thousands. Now at this point, you don't have to put a comma, but you can. Now in the next one, if you have a number like 10,000s, out to the 10,000s, you're required to put a comma. That's the rule. Or I'll tell you what, you'll get marked wrong. After 10,000s is the hundred thousands digit, and then the millions digit, and so on. The 10 millions digit, and so on. Okay, that's high enough for our purposes. Now, suppose, if you would, that I asked you to round a number.
Pay attention, boys. I'll show you how it's done.
Well, of course, you're going to need to know to round to which digit. In this case, we're going to ask you to round 565 to the nearest tens digit. You need to know where that is. There's the tens digit. So everything after that is going to be a 0. Everything after. So we have to ask ourselves, is our answer going to be 506 and a 0, or 507 and a 0? What's going to help us to decide is the next digit. This is the confusing part. The digit after the tens, in this case, the one you're rounding to. Now, if you think about that, that one digit after, in this case, that 5, the ones digit, can only be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. It can only be one of those 10 things. 10's not one of them, is it? 0 is. It can only be one of those because you only get one symbol or one numeral. And it's kind of divided into two parts. The lower ones, 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, and the higher ones, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. Most people think 5's right in the middle, but it really isn't, is it? 5's in the higher group. So we see that the next digit is in the higher group. So that means we're going to go up.
You are correct, sir.
And rounding 565 to the nearest 10, it equals 570.
You'll come again.
Let's do another one. Let's round this number to the nearest 1,000. Now you got to pay attention to what you're rounding to. First thing I do is find that digit, the 1,000. There it is. That means everything after that's going to be a 0. So it's either going to be 267,000 with all zeros, or 268,000. Now who's going to decide? The next digit. And the next digit is a 3, and that's going to be in the lower group, isn't it? So, in this case, we're going to stay at the same number. It's going to be, we never go down, by the way. It's going to be 267,000. Let's just do one more. In this case, we want to round the same number to the nearest, got to pay attention, to the nearest 100. And there is the hundreds digit. You got to make sure you know all your digits. So, it's either going to be 267,300. Note a different answer because we're rounding to a different digit. Or 267,400. Who's going to decide? The next digit. Now the next digit changes depending on what you're rounding to. In this case, the next digit is 6. And 6 is certainly in the upper half of, or the higher numbers, if you would, more than halfway.
I'm dangerous. I'm very, very dangerous.
So your number is 267,400, 267,400. Got the idea? Now we don't just round for the sake of rounding. We round to make things easier. For instance, Suppose I asked you to add these numbers up. Well, you could, but
I can do that, but I don't want to.
it'd be hard, okay? It'd take you a long time. And what if you only needed an estimate? Well, I wouldn't add them up and then round, because I'd still have to go into all the trouble of adding them up. That's still hard. What I would do, I would round each number first. It would make life easier. Now in this case, I'm going to round to the nearest hundred, because they all have hundreds. And plus the directions told me to do that. 294 to the nearest hundred rounds to 300. 613 rounds to 600, because I said hundreds now. And 1,671, we're rounding to the nearest hundred now. So we're going to round to 1,700. Now this makes it way easier to add them up, because zeros are easy to deal with, aren't they? You just add them up. And this estimated sum is 2,600. It was way faster and easier. In fact,
Nerd alert!
what's the real answer? If I add up the real answer, I get 2,578, which is
Missed it by that much.
pretty close. Now, if you need to be exact, then of course you need to be exact and you go through the work. But if you don't, you can use rounding to make your problems easier. Note that we rounded each number first and then added to make it easier. You don't add and go to all the trouble of adding and then round. Okay, you round first because it makes things easier.
Do that again.
Let's estimate a distance here by rounding. Now the distance from Germantown to Richmond is 94 miles. The distance from Richmond to Atlanta is 379 miles. And the distance from Atlanta to Miami is 281 miles. Now if I wanted to just get an estimate of how far it is from Germantown to Miami, I could add them all up. Well, I'd have to estimate first. And what I would do, 94 would round to, let's round to to hundreds. Even though they didn't tell me, I picked hundreds, okay? Because it's the easiest. I could round to tens, but I think if you have your choice and they don't tell you, pick the higher one. So 379 is going to round to, in hundreds now. It's closer to 400 because of that 7. And 281 in hundreds is going to round to 300. Now this is very easy. We've made it easy because we rounded first. You add up those three numbers, and it's about 800 miles from Germantown to Miami. It's important to know how to estimate. Just remember that. Okay, let's do one more. Finishing up your semester, I see Joe has these scores, 59, 74, 89, and 85 on his math test. Let's estimate the total. Well, since they all have tens, rather than add them all up, let's get an approximate sum by rounding. Remember, round first. 59 rounds to 60. 74 rounds to 70 because 4 has to stay the same. 89 goes up to 90. And 85, remember about 5. 5 is not in the middle. 5 is in the upper group. That rounds to 90. And it's going to be much easier to add them now. They add up to
No problemo.
310. Okay? Okay, go try the homework. Get busy.